and welcome to Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today's video is part of a series I do where I compare books with their movie adaptation. And before we get into the book and movie, I want to warn you that there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie, so if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie, you should do that first and then come back and watch this video. I also want to tell you that this is available as a podcast. I will link to Spotify and Apple down below because those are the two most popular platforms, but I am on other platforms as well. So these tend to be about 30 minutes, but especially if they're longer and it works better for you to listen to it, that is available. And I also want to say that even though my podcast is called Why the Book Wins, I do love movies as well, and there are times where the movie wins when comparing book versus movie. So it is not always the book, because I do love movies, and oftentimes, before I even started this podcast, the reason I would read a book was because I liked the movie, and so I wanted to read the book for it. And so I love both, essentially, and I think I give a fair view of both book and movie, despite my name being Why the Book Wins. Anyway, thank you for clicking on this video. I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, let's get right into the book versus movie. Hi, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me here today to talk about The Road, which is a book written by Cormac McCarthy, published in 2006. And then the movie The Road was released in 2009 and directed by John Hillcoat. And this book and movie has been requested 3 different times. The first time being back in October. And so, for that person, it took me 6 months to get around to doing their recommendation. But I do love getting requests from my listeners and my viewers, my subscribers, because I want to do content that I enjoy doing, right? Reading books that I'm interested in. But I also want to have topics that my viewers are wanting to see, or that my listeners on the podcast are wanting to hear about. And so if you have a book movie that you would love to hear me talk about, you can message me on Instagram, you can comment on YouTube videos and let me know something you are wanting to hear me cover. I mean, if it's one that I'm zero interest in doing that one, I'm sorry, then I will tell you, and that's happened a couple times. But like I said, I want to cover topics, book and movies that people want to hear me talk about. And I actually have a poll going on right now on my community page. I think the poll ends tomorrow, so you have 2 days left to vote. And yeah, I try to do those every few months. It's kind of random right now. I don't have a set date. It's just kind of whenever. I've thought of even upping it up to every month, having one book be one that is chosen by my YouTube subscribers. But anyway, right now I don't have a set time frame for doing those polls. It's just kind of random, but I have one up there right now if you want to vote. And again, if you have a request, let me know. I might not get to it right away. It might take me some time, but I do like receiving requests from people. And also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can vote on my community page and just take part in my book versus movie content and other content that I am putting out. Anyway, okay, to The Road. Let's get into the summary for this. We have a man and his son, whose names are never given, living in this post-apocalyptic world, which is crazy cold. No animals exist any longer, and a lot of people have resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. The man and his son are the good guys for multiple reasons. They try to be good people, but they also don't eat people, and so that is one way in which they consider themselves to be the good guys. Even so, this is a world where you really can't trust other people. It's very dog eat dog. Even if you're sharing food with other people, even though that's the kind thing to do, that food you're sharing with them is food that you yourself won't have later on. And so it's a very ruthless world in a lot of ways. Even if people aren't as bad as others, it's not the kindest world because it's a world where you really can't be kind. Very dog eat dog is the best way to describe this, I think. In the end, the man dies, but the boy shortly thereafter meets another man who has a wife and 2 children of his own, and the boy goes off with them. And that's how the book and movie end. For the book review, this book wasn't as engaging as I had hoped, and I oftentimes found my mind wandering as I read. This might come down to personal preference though, because post-apocalyptic futures don't tend to be a genre I gravitate towards, especially in books. I think this might be the first post-apocalyptic book I've ever read. I've read futuristic books or dystopian books or whatever, but the post-apocalyptic world, this might be the first book like that I've ever read. I have seen plenty of post-apocalyptic movies, and I enjoy them well enough. Specifically Mad Max, Fury Road, that one is incredible. Love that one so much. I actually haven't seen the other Mad Max movies. I'm embarrassed to say I've only seen that one that came out in 2015, but I absolutely loved it. And I keep meaning still to watch the other movies, and I just haven't. But anyway, so it's not like I hate the post-apocalyptic genre in general, entirely. For the most part, though, it's just not one I'm drawn to. But I also had a hard time connecting with the characters. Like, I just didn't feel attached to them, specifically the man. I had a hard time connecting and caring about him. I mean, I cared, but I didn't find myself really connecting with him though until the very end, which I did love the ending. And so that, how much I loved the end, helped make up the difference for some of the boredom I might have felt at other points in the book. I am glad to have read this book though, and overall I think I would give it like, I forget now what I rated it on Goodreads, but right now, reflecting back on it, I would give it a 3.5. But I am glad I read it, and it does make me curious to read more by McCarthy. Also, a lot of people talk about like how terrible and like horrific this book is, and I just didn't find it as disturbing as other people do. I mean, like, horrible things happen and are alluded to, but I just didn't find myself really feeling it. Like, throughout reading this book, I was too aware that I was reading a book and that it was just a fictional story. Like, I would never felt so drawn into it, you know? And when you're really drawn into a story, that's when, you know, you really feel the things. And so even though there's like horrible stuff, I just didn't feel it on that deep level because I just never felt drawn into the story enough. There's books that I've read where certain scenes are like scarred in my brain, and this was not one of them. But this book does cover like just different topics that have stuck with me, just different themes, and putting yourself in certain situations and being like, you know, thinking about what I would do potentially. And so that is a positive one why I do give it a higher rating, is because yeah, it's just certain elements and certain themes have stuck with me. I also wanted to address the way this book is written because it does not use quotation marks or apostrophes. As far as the apostrophes, I didn't even notice this until partway through. Suddenly I was like, oh, he's not using an apostrophe there. And then as far as the no quotation marks, that didn't really bother me too much. It reminded me of some other books, specifically Child 44. All the dialogue was written in italics, and I found that more distracting. Having dialogue in italics was just, I wasn't a fan of that. And then The Double by Jose Saramago, that book is the most confusing as far as dialogue goes, because not only does he not use the quotation marks, he also doesn't break up the dialogue into separate lines. It's just all one paragraph, having multiple people speaking, and it's broken up with commas, but then there's also commas just that are used regularly. And so yeah, this one was not nearly as confusing as The Double, which I love The Double though, amazing book. But yeah, so basically what I'm saying is I've heard people complain about the way this is written, not having apostrophes or quotation marks, but honestly, it didn't bother me. And I thought it was fitting for the book itself. I don't know if McCarthy does this in all his books, but for this one, it was fitting because they're living in this minimalist world, minimalist because they have to, and they don't have the luxury of certain things, including not having the luxury of quotation marks and apostrophes. So that's kind of how I took it. I don't know if that's how McCarthy meant it, but yeah, it didn't bother me, even though I've read other people complain about it. And on to the movie. So this movie was directed by John Hillcott, as I said, and he hired screenwriter Joe Penhall to write the screenplay. And one reason why he chose Penhall is because this screenwriter said that he felt the dialogue didn't even need to be changed. And so Hillcott wanted this to be a faithful adaptation, and so he wanted a screenwriter who would keep it faithful. And the movie and book are very similar. So as far as differences go, there's not going to be too many to cover. There's a few things that are left out, and I will talk about maybe scenes that were kept the same, but my thoughts about them as far as book versus movie. But so as far as changes, like, there won't be too many to talk about, is basically what I'm saying. Anyway, to talk about the acting, we have Viggo Mortensen, who plays the man, and he was well cast. And while preparing for this role, he would wear the same clothes for days on end and not shower, and he would starve himself. He went into like some kind of shop, and the owner kicked him out because he thought he was homeless because he was so in the role. And obviously everybody in this movie looks homeless. They're even pushing around shopping carts. But anyway, the main reason I'm sharing that though is if you've watched Arrested Development, Tom Jane and Lindsay, because he's homeless, she thinks he's homeless, but really he's an actor preparing for a role. Anyway, so when I read that, I couldn't help but think of Arrested Development. Comment down below if you're an Arrested Development fan. And then Kodi McPhee plays the boy, and I talked about him in my episode for Power of the Dog, where he plays Peter and is amazing. He is nominated for an Academy Award. I'm recording this like a couple days before the Academy Awards, so we'll see if he wins. He was so incredible in Power of the Dog, though. And I'm usually wary of child actors, but because I also saw Slow West back when that came out, and that was with McPhee, and I thought he was amazing in that as well. So going into The Road, I had high expectations because I've seen some of his later work. And yeah, he was great in this as well. He was only 13, but he looks much younger, which even now he's in his late 20s, but he can pull off playing a teenager as he did in Power of the Dog, because he's just one of those people that look young. But yeah, he is so sweet in this movie, wanting to ensure that they are the good guys. And in both book and movie, the boy is just the beacon of light and hope in this book and movie. And Kodi Smit-McPhee really embraced that and showed that in the movie. Charlize Theron is in the brief role of the woman who is the man's wife and the boy's mother. And I thought she was incredible. I was wishing she would have been in even more. And in general, I wish there were more women in this movie, because we have the man and the boy obviously as the central characters. I mean, they meet the old man, who is played by Robert Duvall, who is incredible. But for the most part, this is male dominated, partly because the man and the boy are the main characters and they're both men. Anyway, I would have liked to have seen more women in this, and the scene at the end where there's a woman, scenes with them just left me wanting to hear about more from them, you know? But Theron really conveyed just the desperation and the hopelessness and the horror, and then later just being like, I can't do this, and just not being able to continue to go on. Also, part of the reason she is so great in these flashbacks is also because Mortensen is also fantastic in these scenes, and just both of them are just so desperate. He's desperate for her to just continue living, and she's just like past it. So yeah, the flashback scenes were amazing, and I love Charlize Theron in this. But to talk about the woman for a bit, in the movie, it seemed like the man was like still going through the grieving process of his wife more so than he was in the book. And we also have a flashback where it shows her teaching him to play the piano, and then later in the present day, they come across a piano and he like has a breakdown because of this memory, because the piano makes him think of his wife. And that wasn't in the book. And then we also see the part where he's on the bridge with her photo and his wedding ring, and he sets the wedding ring down in the photo. I think he like tosses out onto the bridge. And that was also not in the book. But in both book and movie, we get the various flashbacks with her. Like I said, just showing how she progressed throughout this time and ended up deciding to commit suicide, and how she wanted to take the boy with her, but she didn't for the man's sake. And then to talk about the man, in the movie, like I said, he did show more emotion in the movie than he did in the book. For example, missing his wife, that just seemed more present in the movie. But both book and movie do have the beautiful line where he is reflecting back, and this is like closer to the end, where he's reflecting back to a day he had with his wife, and it read, "If I were God, I would have made the world just so and no different. And so I have you." And that's just such a beautiful line, and so sad and tragic because of what the world has become. But yeah, the man in the book, he could be kind of wooden at times. And like, I get it, because he's living in this world where they can't trust other people. And again, like, it's a luxury to show emotion even. You know, he's in this dangerous world and he has a son to protect and to teach, and he just doesn't have the time to open up and share emotions, at least not often. So I understand it, but it did caused me to, like I said, to just not feel very connected to him. And in the book, he is often coughing, which is also shown in the movie. However, in the book, he's never talking about how he needs to prepare the boy to be on his own, meaning like alluding to the man's own death. In the book, what's often mentioned is the fact that the boy might die, either because he gets sick or whatever and dies, or because the man has to kill him and then kill himself because of just the world getting too bad or them starving or something. And so what's talked about is the man questioning whether or not he's going to be able to do that. And so, yeah, throughout the book, I thought the boy was the one who was going to die, but it was alluded to enough. It was almost like too much, where I was like, the boy's death is brought up enough that I actually don't think that's what's going to happen. And it wasn't. The man ended up dying. But yeah, the movie kind of prepares you for the man's death, and the man is like preparing himself for his death. Whereas in the book, that was not the case, and it seemed more like the boy would end up dying. And then to talk about the boy, there is a scene that I loved in both book and movie, and it reads, the man is talking, and it reads, "I'm scared," he said. "Do you understand? I'm scared. You're not the one who has to worry about everything." The boy looked up, his wet face grimy. "Yes, I am," he said. "I am the one." And this is a great line from the book, but the movie, I thought this was like one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And in the book, it says, maybe I missed it, but I'm pretty sure, I didn't highlight it apparently, but I'm pretty sure it says that he said it quietly, that he is the one. Whereas in the movie, he has more emotion in it. And he's like, "I am the one." And I just thought that was an incredible scene. Like I said, the emotion on both sides, Mortensen and Smit-McPhee, I thought it was incredible. The characters just felt more human and real in the movie for me than they did in the book because of that emotion that they were showing more often. And yeah, the boy was just such a great character in both. And like I said, he's this beacon of light and hope. And he also helps his dad keep in touch with the dad's own humanity, because the dad can just be more jaded and wary of people. And so, for example, we have the robber who steals all their stuff. And when they find him, the dad, he doesn't kill him, but he basically leaves the man for dead. And so the boy is like, yeah, we didn't kill him, but we might as well have. And the boy convinces the man to go back and to find this guy and to give him back his clothes and even give him some food of theirs. They don't actually end up finding the man, so we don't know what happens, but just, the boy helping his dad stay in touch with his own humanity, right? And so I just really loved that aspect of the story. And the boy, he was, like I said, he was a great character. And yeah, throughout this story, I just wanted to just wrap him up and take him away from this world before he's ruined by it, because right now he's so sweet and kind and wanting to be good. And you're worried that as time goes on, he's going to lose that, which, by the way, people like, this book is bleak, but I think the ending, which we'll get to, helps it not be as depressing as some people like to say it is. But anyway, we'll get to that. Before we talk about the ending, I want to talk about, the good guys and the bad guys. Like the debate that goes on between, the boys constantly being like, we're one of the good guys, right? And then the scene with the robber, he's kind of like, if we're one of the good guys, then we wouldn't have left that man that way. We got to go back and help him. And so this just kind of made me think about what it means to be human, I guess. Kind of like the wife says, where she tells him, I don't want to just survive. I want to live, and I can't live in this world the way it is, and just surviving isn't enough for me. And I don't know, I kind of agree with her, because just surviving, like, that's not living life. And not just surviving, but surviving and not being able to trust other people and not feeling like you can be kind to others, because like I said, it's just this dog eat dog world, and you need to save your food for yourself, and you can't even trust most people. And I feel like the essence of life is being with other people and being kind to other people and getting to know people and sharing what you have with others and them sharing with you. And so living in a world where that's doesn't exist, yeah, I wouldn't want to live in a world like that. And then that's also, again, just the beauty of the boy in this book, is that he still has that in him. The man is kind of, he also has a son to protect, but he's kind of beyond that, where he's like, we're just surviving. But the boy, he also doesn't want to just survive. He wants to be able to give to others and to share and to help others. Again, just the essence of life, right? The essence of life isn't just to survive and look out for yourself only. It's about being willing to help others and to think of others and to forgive those who may do you wrong, like the way the boy forgave the robber and just wanted to help him, and just still seeing people as people and not threats. Which, again, I understand in this world, it's a luxury to see people as people, right? But yeah, so just that theme I really liked, and it stuck with me. And so to talk about the ending, when the man dies, that was like the most emotional scene in the book for sure, because the man he doesn't open up that much until the end. And so finally seeing him opening up in that moment, like, I thought I was going to cry. That was a great scene. And then after this, the boy comes across this other man played by Guy Pearce. The boy's dad had talked about how they carried the fire, meaning like carried the will to survive, I guess. And so the boy asks, which also, carrying the fire also means being a good guy too. And so when the boy comes across Guy Pearce, he's like, do you carry the fire? And the guy says, yes, he does. And then the boy is like, are you a good guy, or do you eat people or whatever? And the guy's like, no, I don't eat people. And I have 2 kids of my own, and I have a wife. And in the movie, they had a dog. I don't remember if they had a dog in the book. And so then the boy goes off with them. And in the movie and book, he also meets the wife. And like I said, I love this scene in the movie with the wife talking to him, being like, I've been worried about you, and I'm glad to know that you'll be safe now. And again, just that small moment with her, I was like, I want more. I want to learn more about her and her journey in this horrible world. But anyway, it's just a brief scene, but it is a great scene. Anyway, when I read this in the book, he has that conversation asking the man if he has the fire and everything, and then he goes off with them, and it's the end. And so when I was reading it, I was like, wait, are they like actually good though? Is he lying about having kids? Like, who knows? Like, is he good or not? And I actually think that's part of the beauty of the ending, is that you can decide if you think these people were actually good or not. And I was reading a Reddit thread, and how someone shared how they thought that the ending helps decide where you are in life. Like, are you more jaded or are you more optimistic? Because if you're more optimistic, you'll be like, oh, the boy found good people, some more of the good guys, and everything's going to be okay. But then there were other Reddit users who were like, I totally assumed that they were just lying to him and that they were bad. So yeah, it's up to you to decide, and maybe part of, where you are in life, dictates what you think ends up happening. In the book, I was like, man, I don't know, I'm worried. Whereas in the movie, it definitely seemed pretty clear that they were good. So I felt more hopeful with the ending in the movie specifically, where like we see his kids and their dog. Whereas in the book, he sees the wife, but I think that's it. But anyway, this ending, I think, is just such a positive ending of him uniting with some of the other good guys, because there were good people out there. And now he doesn't have to just survive. He can continue to live, what it really means to live by connecting with other people, which, he had his dad to connect to, but now he has an even bigger group to connect with. But I also wanted to talk about the simplicity of this story, because a lot of post-apocalyptic movies will have the main character like on a mission of some sort. Either they're traveling somewhere where they've heard a whole community lives and like, oh, we got to get to this dream location. Or they are traveling to some location to help save the world. Or they are traveling to, go to the bad guys' headquarters and stop the bad guys from doing whatever it is they're doing. There's some kind of mission. And so I did like that this story has no mission. It's just them living. Like they have the goal to get to the coast and they keep going south. But even that, it's just like to live in this world, you just have to constantly be on the move. And so I feel like they were just kind of like, well, let's go to the coast and then let's just keep going south. Because once they get to the coast, they're there for a couple days and then they just keep moving. And so I did like that, a very simple story that's just about what it's like to live in this world trying to survive. And I wanted to talk specifically about the scene in the bunker when they find like this huge store of food and running water and light. And this was a great scene in both book and movie. And in the book and movie, but in the book specifically, when they come across this place, they had been starving and the man thought that it was going to like be the end for them. And when he comes across this, he thinks, even now, some part of him wished they never found this refuge. Some part of him always wished it to be over. That also is just so tragic, how even realizing life can continue, you're grateful, but at the same time, you're like, oh man, like I just want it to end though. And so that's just so sad. But anyway, I thought that was a great line. But I think this is an important scene though in book and movies, because it's a bright spot, literally, because this movie is very dark. Like it's gray and black. Those are the colors. Until we get in this food storage bunker place where there's all these different foods. And it's just, having this moment of bounty and joy. It was just, I think it was very necessary to have in this story, to have this bright spot. And also just like the simple pleasures, like when he's listing off the food that they're able to eat, and just the fact that they can finally take a bath and wash their clothes, and these things that we take for granted right now. But to them, it's like, it's such bounty. And I also, again, just loved how sweet the boy was, how he wanted to say a prayer thanking these people who had set up this bunker, and yet we're never able to use it. And again, just one of those sweet scenes where you just are like, oh man, like I want to protect him. And real quick before we wrap this up, I want to talk about some minor changes. So there are a few scenes that were in the book but not in the movie. And starting with a scene that was in the movie but it was changed, because in book and movie the boy gets very sick, and in the book like he's very sick, and the reader is like, I was thinking he was gonna die. And the man even thinks he's going to die. And the man has this breakdown and he's sobbing, but then the boy gets better. And the boy gets sick in the movie, but it wasn't nearly as dramatic. And it didn't seem like the boy is at death's door in the movie. And then some scenes that are left out. The book has a number of scenes that are a bit more gruesome that were not in the movie. So the movie shows them finding the house and going in the basement and seeing the people there that are being kept by the cannibals. Great scene in book and movie. But there's also a scene where they go to like this diner and they see like this dried up head in a cake display case. And then there's another scene where they see this caravan walking by and it has women and boys as prisoners. And it's just the horrible state the world is in, right? And how bad the bad guys are. And then another scene where they see a dead baby. So just more horrific things, I guess, showing you how bad this post-apocalyptic world is. And the director, he chose not to include these because he was like, this movie is dark enough and bleak enough that I don't need to include these scenes. And so that's why he left them out. Yeah, like I said, those scenes weren't as scarring for me when I look back on it as maybe they should be. But again, I think as I was reading this book, I was just always aware that I was reading a fictional story, and I never like fell into the story, like will sometimes happen. Anyway, I've already said that and now I'm just repeating myself. Going to book or movie, book versus movie. The movie follows the book very closely, very faithful adaptation. And yeah, I found it much more engaging and I thought the acting was wonderful and I felt connected to the characters more so in the movie. Honestly, if you've seen the movie and you really loved it, I don't know if people who love the book are gonna not like this, but I don't know if I would recommend the book because I think the movie stays so true to the book and is maybe even a little better. For me personally, I just felt more connected to the movie than I had to the book. Credit where credit is due, of course, because the movie wouldn't exist without the book. But yeah, for me, the movie wins here. And again, I know a lot of people love this book, and I'm not, I didn't hate it. I would give it 3.5 to 4 stars. Although again, 4 stars feels generous, so it's probably more 3.5. But yeah, like I said, I just didn't feel as engaged as I was reading it, but I did enjoy it and I liked it and it did have some powerful scenes. And yeah, because this is requested by people, I am worried. Obviously, these people love this book and movie, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be requesting it. And so I feel bad that I didn't love the book more, but that's just how I feel about it. But I appreciate you guys requesting this. Thanks again for watching this video, listening to this podcast. Comment your thoughts down below on why you think this is such an amazing book and or movie. And if you were to live in a post-apocalyptic world, which would you choose? Cold, like terribly cold and dark, or, the Mad Max futuristic world where it's hot and dusty and bright. Both would be bad, but I personally hate the cold weather and I can't imagine living that cold and that dark, like living without the sun too. So I would take the heat and the sunshine, even if it is unbearable heat, that's still what I would end up choosing. So what would you guys choose in your post-apocalyptic world? Which both would suck, but pick your poison. Super cold and dark or super hot and bright? Let me know down below in the comments. And join me next week when we will be talking about Matchstick Men, which is a movie directed by Ridley Scott starring Nicolas Cage, Sam Rockwell, and Alison Lohman. And the book is written by Eric Garcia. It's about a couple con artists, which is always fun. So yeah, join me next week for that one, and I will see you guys next time.